Now that we've talked about some advanced stroke settings, let's talk about some advanced object settings. If you select your shape here, we can actually start typing into it fairly easily by grabbing your type tool and moving your cursor into the center of the shape so that your cursor changes to a dotted circle as opposed to a dotted square. When you click into that shape, you can now type into it. I'm going to name this puppy Jake. That's right, this puppy's name is Jake. Now that I've got Jake in there, it would be nice if I could set the look of him. So I'm going to set a couple of things like middle alignment and maybe a different font. Of course, it helps when you have the text selected, doesn't it? There we go. Do you remember how to set the text into the center of the shape? It was actually by changing the block options for this text frame, which would be Command B. By choosing Command B, I can change the vertical justification to center. And now it looks like my text is in the center of the label. Now, let's say that we want to see a little bit of the image behind this label. The problem is, if I just go up and change the opacity of the label, the whole label reduces in opacity. The problem is the text reduces in opacity and the dash or the stroke reduces in opacity. Well, what would be nice if I could see some of the image behind this shape, but retain the solid quality of the stroke and the solid quality of the text. You can do this by setting the opacity of only the fill, but this isn't necessarily obvious how to do this. In order to do this, you actually have to essentially apply an effect to an object. When you do this, what you're going to do is apply an effect to one part of the object. The whole object, the stroke, the fill, or the text. Right now what I'd like to do is just apply something to the fill. So if I choose fill right now, and then lower the opacity, now my text and my outlines stay strong, but the background color changes. So now I have the solid text and stroke, but the transparent fill. And I did it by just selecting my object, choosing where to apply the opacity, whether it was to the whole object, to the stroke, to the fill, or the text. In this way, you can also add a drop shadow, or in fact, any of about tons of effects. For instance, if you choose any one of these effects, you'll pop into what's known as the effects window. The effects window has lots of options, and in fact, most of them don't even become apparent until you realize that you can set them each to any individual area of this object. From here, I can change the blending mode as well as the opacity, and also add in all these nice effects, such as drop shadows, and outer glows, and bevels and embosses. I think I actually like that drop shadow. That's kind of nice. I'm going to leave that right there. Drop shadows are fairly easy to add. You have a color set in this color box right here. You have a blending mode, usually set to multiply. If you use a light color, you might want to set this to something else. And you have an opacity. Now I've got a label with a drop shadow and a see-through back. It's looking pretty good. Go ahead and try out these effects on your shape. And when you're ready, click to continue.